Everywhere you turn to today, in many circles, there are conversations being had about mental health. Some understand it, some don't really understand it. For some people, it's just a buzzword that they just identify with and they use it so loosely and they don't really know. So that's why we're taking the time to make this distinction in this pilot episode. Hello, thank you for joining us today for the pilot episode of Mindlife Conversations. This is a series of conversations that seeks to challenge us and stimulate us by having conversations that ultimately would lead us to a place of wholeness and wellness in our minds as we seek to be the best version of ourselves and strive to achieve the goals that we have set before us within a specific time frame. So it's something that you definitely don't want to miss. Every episode is loaded with interesting conversations, and I have no doubt that you are going to find them very helpful. So once again, you are welcome. Thank you for joining us. So today, as I said, it's our pilot episode, and what we want to do today is to make the distinction between mental health and mental illness, which I find is a very important distinction to be made at this time of our lives and at this time in history. Everywhere you turn to today, in many circles, there are conversations being had about mental health. Some understand it, some don't really understand it. For some people, it's just a buzzword that they just identify with. So some people, every little thing that happens, they go, my mental health, and they use it so loosely and they don't really know. So that's why we're taking the time to make this distinction in this pilot episode. The first thing I want to emphasize as we talk about mental health is that mental health is a concept that is very, very similar to physical health. That's the first thing that you need to note about mental health. Mental health does not first of all speak of an illness that people will always try to stigmatize or people will feel ashamed talking about, and which sometimes lands people in the psychiatric hospital. So mental health is a concept, and for everybody, our mental health, just like our physical health, is on a spectrum. On the left side of that spectrum, you have the lower numbers. So you have 1 on the left hand of the spectrum, and on the right hand of the spectrum, you have 10. So it's a spectrum of 1 to 10. That's one way that you can see it. And if you understand this, I believe that after this conversation, you will begin to prioritize your mental health because your functioning depends on it. I said to us earlier on that the goal of Mindlife Conversations is to bring conversations to us that will guide us to a place of wellness and wholeness so that we can strive to be the best version of ourselves, and we can also strive to achieve the goals that we have set before us within a period of time. So it's on a spectrum of 1 to 10. 1 would speak of a negative mental health or bad mental health, or a more appropriate word would be poor. Okay? And then on the extreme right, you have good, or healthy. And then in the middle, maybe you could use moderate. And then there are a couple of things that feed into that would determine whether a person's mental health is good or bad. So right now, let's see a definition of mental health from the World Health Organization. You would find it very useful. There are many variations of this, but I found a very simple one that I believe everyone listening to me can relate with. So the WHO defines mental health as a state of well-being. So please take note of the word well-being. It's so important. That enables people to cope with the stresses of life, which comes to all of us. It's a state of mental well-being that enables people cope with the stresses of life, realize their abilities, learn well and work well, and contribute to their community. So any good understanding of mental health will involve all of these things. So a person who is prioritizing their mental health, what it will look like in daily life is that they will be in a good state of well-being. They will be able to cope with the stress that comes to all of us. And it doesn't matter which country you live in, or which part of the world you are, or which continent, we all go through stress. Some of us are in marriages that are stressing us out. Some of us are parents that is stressful. Some of us have stressful jobs. Most of us are stressed out by the economy, and we can go on and on. Some of us are even stressed out by the football team or the sports team that we support. There is an unending supply of stress. You don't have to go too far to encounter stress. But when you have a good mental health, or your mental health is in a healthy place, you are able to cope with stress, and then very important, you are able to contribute to your community. You're able to contribute anywhere that you find yourself. You are not just taking and taking, but you have a desire to contribute, and you're making those contributions, and hopefully your world is a better place. On the other hand, what is a mental illness or a mental health disorder? It is an illness that is diagnosable, which affects a person's thinking, emotional state, and behavior, and disrupts the person's ability to work or carry out other daily activities, and finally affects the ability to engage in satisfying personal relationships. So you see that just by making this distinction, I think it's clear that mental health doesn't speak of an illness automatically. And that's so important, because when you try to have this conversation with a lot of people, there's a lot of stigma around it, because people have ignorant views that are not helpful. People get to the point of mental illness when they don't prioritize their mental health, or when they are overwhelmed by the challenges and stresses that they face. This is very important, and we're having this intentionally because, as I said at the beginning, this is our pilot episode, and it's important that we begin this way, and then we'll segue to other important conversations that will hopefully lead us to a place of wholeness and wellness, because your mind is probably the greatest asset that you have, and you want to be sure that you are taking care of it and it's in a top shape so that you can be the best version of yourself. You can strive to achieve the goals that you have set for yourself. Okay, so as we begin to tie this conversation up for this episode, mental health includes our emotions, our feelings of connections to others, our thoughts and feelings, and being able to manage life's highs and lows. So you want to pay attention to all of this so that hopefully you do not break down. Another reason this conversation is important is that when you understand these distinctions, you are able to support people better when they seem to be struggling, because we all need each other. And as we know, nobody is an island. Our world as we have it today has become really, really stressful, and a lot of people are struggling with their mental health. They're not ill, there's nothing wrong with them yet, but if nothing is done, then they might get to the end of the spectrum that nobody really, really wants to get to. So I hope you have found this helpful. As I said, we'll be coming your way every week with interesting conversations that will stimulate us and challenge us. So I'd like you to share this episode. I'd like you to subscribe to our channel. I'd like you to share your comments. And then finally, I'd like you to like the video. Tell everybody about this episode. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.